We had the French train in August of 2015. We had Paris, of course, November of last year. Then San Bernardino, December of last year. Then Brussels at the airport there in March of this year. And Orlando, June of this year. Istanbul now, June. Is there any pattern to these? Do they have something to do with geography, opportunity, vengeance? What do we make of this pattern, if there is one? Or isn't there one, and isn't that the heart of terrorism? There is no pattern.
Well, there is a pattern, and the pattern is that they are increasingly sophisticated attacks, and they're happening with greater frequency in the Western world. And that is it. This is the new reality for us. And we are
How much brains does it take to pack yourself up with TNT and go running into a crowd and blowing yourself up? What do you mean sophistication?
Well, the attacks are planned. Their surveillance is conducted ahead of time. Yeah. They're thought out. They're coordinated. Each person participating in the attack has a specific role. In this case, the Turks were quite adept at understanding and analyzing what happened in Brussels and changed their security technique and moved it to the outer perimeter of the building. And this saved countless lives. It appears that these terrorists were attempting to penetrate one of those security points by blowing it up, this way allowing a pathway for the others to pass through. So when we're talking sophistication in tactics, that takes a little bit of training, that takes some bravery, and this is the new reality.
Well, it's suicide. Now, is suicide brave?
Well, I wouldn't want to commit suicide.
Yeah, I don't want to build these guys up either brain power or guts. But anyway,
but they have to be trained. But American airports and American facilities are not prepared to deal with this, as well as the Turks dealt with it today.
Laith, let me ask you the same question. Does that sound sophisticated? The idea of one person going in, almost like charging an old medieval fort. One person blows up the gate, the others rush through.
Look, I think Anthony is right. We've seen a string of sophisticated attacks, and the sophistication here is not about strapping yourself with explosives. It's about building the explosives themselves. So you have to be trained. It's not something you can just get.
What did you see when you watched that videotape, that surveillance tape? We haven't certified it here, but we're looking at it as a prospect here. What happened there? The guy was shot down. He's still alive. His leg was dangling a bit there at one point. All of a sudden, boom.
Well, first of all, it's not clear whether he actually detonated that vest or that vest had an error in detonation due to him being shot and then detonated on its own. So that's not clear. But what is clear is that there were at least 3 suicide bombers, so that's coordinated. They attacked likely multiple parts of the airport, or at least 2 different parts of the airport. And what appears likely here is that this is taking place during the month of Ramadan, as we mentioned, and during this month, the frequency of attacks just goes higher. I mean, this is a call that was made specifically by ISIS spokesman Abu Muhammad al-Adnani just days before Ramadan to specifically strike during this month against what he labeled civilians better than military. And so this seems to essentially follow in the footsteps of what he called for.
Tara, throughout the Islamic world of millions of people, 3 million people or so, and there's a billion people rather, they're thinking about this, and they're thinking, why attack Turkey, which is the most Western of all the Islamic states, I guess you could say, Islamic countries? Was this an attack on modernity? What's the motive of this? Would most people think of in Indonesia or Pakistan or Indians living or Muslims living in India? What would they think would be the motive behind something like this?
Well, there are a few reasons. I mean, this is a major airport. I think it's the 10th or 11th largest airport. It has a huge international traveler base going through there. Turkey is part of the coalition. Turkey's striking ISIS in the heart of Syria. So there are a number of reasons. I mean, in terms of the attack itself, I agree that it was coordinated and there were explosives used, but I don't want to sort of overestimate that these attacks we're seeing, although increased in frequency, I don't think that they're necessarily all increasing in sophistication. We see terrorist groups time and time again hit the same types of targets. Transportation targets have always been the top of the list. We see them using the same types of tactics, suicide bombs, more recently shootings. And some of these, to be honest, don't require that much funding, don't require that much training. In the case of Orlando or the homegrown cases, very little contact or operational training. So I don't want to sort of give them the boost of saying that these are increasing in sophistication. Coordination maybe because these had multiple bombers, but a lot of these attacks we don't know if these individuals traveled to Syria and Iraq and got training. We don't really know enough about that. Turkey does have high foreign fighter flow into Syria, so it's possible, but it's too early to say whether or not they were inspired, whether they acted on their own. I mean, a lot of these people are inspired and have never actually had operational training or met with individuals in the groups themselves. So I just don't want to overstate the sophistication. Terrorists can be very successful, unfortunately, with low sophistication. That's why it's an asymmetric tactic. We saw in Orlando, one individual with a gun in a nightclub was able to create the most death and destruction in a mass shooting in U.S. history. So I don't want to overstate the sophistication, but in a sense, it doesn't matter because a low sophistication attack can still cause a large number of casualties, unfortunately.